If you, like me, are trying to lose weight or become healthier in any way, you've probably come across the concept of calories in, calories out. And there seems to be a lot of contradicting opinions. There are some people who very strongly believe in it and some other people who strongly oppose it. And I think that for the most part, most of us have an incomplete view of what it is. I know that was the case for me before I started this new quest of trying to become healthy and lose weight. And so I thought I'd come here today and share with you guys some of what I found, because as I started researching this a little bit more and found people with very strong opinions on both sides of it, I realized that, like with most things, the reality is some kind of a gray area in the middle. And so the concept of calories in, calories out is very, or I guess can be very simple. If you want to lose weight, you consume less calories than your body burns in a day. And then eventually, because of that caloric deficit, you lose weight. And the opposite is true if you want to gain weight. You just eat more calories than your body needs and you'll put on some weight. So while that is technically true, the devil is in the details, as I've come to find myself. And it all has to do with caloric density versus nutrient density. Some foods have more calories per gram, and some foods have more nutrients per gram, basically. And so a concept that was very difficult for me at first, more from a psychological point of view, and it will probably apply to some of you guys who are also trying to lose weight, and that is when we think about the concept of calories in, calories out from a purely mathematical perspective, it's almost like we're giving ourselves leeway, a free rein to basically eat whatever we want as long as we're staying under the amount of calories that we're supposed to eat in order to lose weight, right? And so for most of us, that number is probably going to be very different, because that technically has to do with, how old you are, what your, daily exercise habits are, a bunch of different things. And so that range is going to vary wildly, but for the most part, I think that most people could probably be fine consuming the average of 2,000 calories per day. And the problem with that is that if you were to consume 2,000 calories of candy, technically you could still be losing weight, but you're probably going to have a very miserable time at it, because candy is all sugar and it has no nutritional value to it. And so I've started to realize that it's not just about the number or the amount of calories that you're consuming, but the quality of those calories is probably even more important than the amount of calories that you're consuming, because our bodies need more, a variety of things in order to function properly. And so as I started looking into this for myself, I realized that I needed to start looking at the nutritional value, the actual components of the calories that I was consuming. Because again, if I were given sort of free rein in order to just, meet your calorie goal and you're good, it would probably be mostly junk food. And I'm guessing that happens to a lot of you guys. And so it's not a bad idea to limit your calories and making sure that you're not consuming more than your body needs. But unfortunately, we also have to be paying attention to the quality of the calories that we're consuming. And that basically comes down to the three macros, the macro components of your calories, which are carbohydrates, protein, and fats, right? And so before I started doing this, over the last 100 days, I hadn't really looked at the idea of macros. I was aware of it. I knew that carbs, I should limit carbs, and I had, what I thought was a pretty good understanding of it. But I wasn't really thinking about it as in the same way that I am now. I guess I wasn't really taking it into consideration as much as I am now. So then this sort of becomes a balancing game of, are we consuming enough nutrients? And are we giving our bodies all the nutrients that it needs, while also maintaining, if we're trying to lose weight, a caloric restriction? And I'm really coming at this from my own personal point of view, which I'm probably guessing is where most of you are going to be. We need to lose some weight. We need to become healthier. One of the ways that we're going to lose some weight is by consuming fewer calories than our bodies need, and therefore being able to tap into our fat storage and use those for energy, for the extra energy that we need. And so therefore we're burning fat and we're losing weight, right? And so my approach is coming from my own perspective, which is that one, and hopefully is the same one as for most of you guys. But it becomes this balancing act where we have to make sure that the calories that we're consuming have the nutrients and the specific things that our bodies need, and making sure that we're not consuming so many of them that it sort of defeats the purpose, if you will. And so in theory, consuming fewer calories is going to make us lose weight. But if we're not giving our bodies all the nutrients that it needs through those foods, things start to get a little bit complicated, because our metabolism is a very, very, very complex thing. And, it's basically going to try to do whatever it is that it needs to do in order to keep you alive, right? And so we also have to think about it in terms of how our bodies evolved to deal with food shortages, and just, when food was a lot scarce than it is now. We have such a surplus of access to food for most people around the world that a lack of calories is no longer the problem. The problem is that we have too many calories and they're too available. And so as we start thinking about not just the amount of calories, but the quality of those calories, then we have to start thinking about the caloric density and the nutrient density of certain foods, because some calories are going to contribute more nutrients per gram than some others. And so if you're eating 100 grams of broccoli versus 100 grams of candy, candy is going to have a lot more calories, but broccoli is going to have a lot more nutrients. And so there needs to be a balancing act. Even though you're still consuming 100 grams, if you needed like that quick energy for whatever reason, the candy is going to give you that, right? But the candy is only going to give you that energy that's sort of, what we call empty calories, because it's not really contributing anything more. And then the broccoli is probably going to give you more nutrients that you need, but it also has a lot less calories per gram. And so we need to, I've started to think about this in terms of, we need to have enough nutrients so that my body is healthy and it's receiving all the nutrition that it needs. But then at the same time, make sure not only that I'm not consuming way too many calories, but consuming enough calories. Because I also don't want the caloric restriction to basically tell my body, tell my metabolism that we need to shift our energy expenditure downward to account for the lack of calories that we're receiving. And so it's become this tricky thing, like I was saying, this balancing act of making sure that you're consuming enough, but not too much. And that what you're consuming has enough quality to it that it's meeting your nutritional needs. And so carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. I never really thought about it this way. Also, apparently there is a way where if you don't have enough calories, and I guess if you're not consuming enough protein in order to maintain your muscle mass, your own body will start breaking down muscle tissue for energy. And so I guess in a way you could be losing weight, but not in an ideal way, because we're not getting rid of our fat, we're losing muscle. And so muscle weighs less than fat. Muscles have more caloric needs, I guess. So technically, the more muscle you have, the better your metabolism is, because you're going to burn through those calories to maintain that muscle. And so it basically does the opposite of what we want to do. It's going to make it so that it's harder to lose weight. And so we want to make sure that the calories that we're consuming also have enough protein to maintain that muscle mass, so that our metabolism continues to improve, as opposed to the opposite. And so, again, just thinking about the calories is not going to be enough. We have to be thinking about the quality of those calories, and the quality of those calories in terms of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and balancing that with the amount of calories that we're consuming. So thinking about purely calories in, calories out from a mathematical perspective is an incomplete view, because you could be meeting your caloric needs with foods that are not nutrient dense, and so you're going to get the calories but not the nutrition, and unfortunately your body's not going to have everything that it needs to work with. Then at the same time, you could be eating the right kinds of foods and having the right nutrition, but if you're eating too much of it, it's also going to have a negative effect. So we need to think about it in terms of eating the right amount of calories, and that is going to be different for all of us, because we all have a different basal metabolic rate, which is basically the amount of calories that your body burns just to stay alive, I guess. If you didn't move, if you didn't do any exercise or moved at all, that's the amount of calories that your body is going to burn either way. And then everything else that we do throughout the day, if we exercise, even like non-exercise movement, I don't know, like you're cleaning around the house, you're going to the supermarket, like all of those activities also burn calories. So it is important to figure out how many calories you need. And there are a bunch of different ways to do this. There are different health trackers and things. For example, I use this thing, it's called an Oura Ring, and basically just based on my age and my weight and my height and all of those things, it basically figures out what my basal metabolic rate is, and basically we go from there. So we want to make sure that we're consuming enough calories, but that we're also at a bit of a caloric deficit if we're trying to lose weight, like it is in my case, and making sure that the makeup of those calories is well balanced between carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, to make sure that we're getting the energy that we need from the carbs, that we're getting the nutrition that we get from the protein and the fats, make sure that we're giving our body everything that it needs, but then at the same time that we're being mindful that maybe we're not overeating. And so technically calories in, calories out works, but really only works well if you're keeping in mind the quality of those calories, because that's where the most important part is going to come in. If you're getting the right amount of calories for energy, but you're also getting the right amount of nutrition from those calories that you're consuming, and if you, like me, are trying to lose weight, figuring out what your body needs to function properly while maintaining a caloric deficit and maintaining proper nutrition becomes that balancing act that I was talking about. And so in the future, I guess, when you hear me talking about the stuff that I'm doing, and I am as I mentioned before, on a quest to lose 150 pounds, and I am being mindful of the calories that I'm consuming. Know that it is being done from this more holistic approach, where I'm being mindful of the calories, but I'm mostly paying attention to the makeup of those calories. How much is it carbs, how much is protein, how much is fat? And that way I can try to figure out how to give my body what it needs while still, being at enough caloric restriction that I'm losing weight, which is ideally what we want. We want to be losing fat, putting on muscle that's going to help our metabolism. And so that's basically it. Thank you so much for hanging with me. I am working my way through all these different concepts, and I'm trying to expand my knowledge into, to try to help myself with this quest that is confusing enough when we first start out. And there are so many contradicting opinions, and I'm trying to figure out if there's a more sensible approach without taking such a hard line with any specific concept, but that we can just, something that we can work with that's a little more nuanced, a little more balanced. So thank you so much for being here. See you next time.